Happening now. Welcome to another amazing episode of the EdTech Situation Room. I am your host, Wes Fryer, joining from Oklahoma City. I'm the Director of Technology at Cassidy School and a rather busy bee when it comes to technology things. Jason, how are you doing up in Montana this evening?
I'm doing quite well. My name is Jason Eifer, and I am the Curriculum Director and Assistant Director of the Montana Digital Academy, the state virtual school in fabulous Montana, where our offices are located in Missoula, Montana. I'm also the NCC Tech Savvy Administrator, and I guess I am a busy bee with technology as well. I think that's a good way to describe both of us. So all good. How you doing, Wes?
Please don't hesitate to interrupt me. If we start to have trouble streaming, I have not done the typical to my kids off of Netflix. I'll comment that my wife is on the pastor nominating committee for our church, and living as we do in the flat technology, rich world, they've done 5 different interviews, which I've helped them set up on using Zoom. But nice. We learned that with candidates, you either need to tell them to be at your place of work where there's high-speed internet, or make sure you are on the top tier, because we have had some difficulty with just once or twice where somebody was at home on a connection they thought was fast enough. But it really is pretty amazing, and we've been using AirPlay. So I bought a $7 rubber Lazy Susan that sits in this little Pelican case on our coffee table, and then it just AirPlays up to the TV and rotates around. It's awesome, so cool.
Nice.
So, what's new with you? You said you're not traveling as much now. Your schedule's calmed down a little bit, and you were saying you've progressed significantly on the dissertation in the last 2 weeks.
That's correct. Yep. I have written a prospectus for my committee, and we're regathering the committee. It's been a while since I asked them, so I needed to kind of reconnect everyone, and it feels like we're all headed in the right direction, and I'm excited to get started on the process. I started my doctorate in 2008, and I wasn't exactly sure at the time if I would finish it, not because I didn't want to, but because, life intervenes. And as it turns out, life has intervened over and over and over again. But I'm done with coursework, and I have a good direction, a great committee, great advisors. So I'm looking forward to the process of researching and writing.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to jump into it. Welcome to Tiffany, who I see is joining us live. And for those of you who are probably going to be hearing this after the fact, whether you are or not, all the links that we're going to talk about are available on our website, edtechsr.com/links. Tiffany and any others who will join us, we welcome you to please text in any questions that you'd like to offer, or even if you'd like to join. We have the ability to have 2 other people join us live. But our format is basically to toss out some questions and really talk about the educational technology spin on the educational technology news. And so we did not do a show last week. So we've got kind of 2 weeks of news to draw on. I didn't even tell this to Jason, but I'm going to throw him a curveball, but I will answer it first. One of the things I kind of enjoy with podcasts is you kind of learn different things about your hosts as you kind of go along. So I don't know what we would call this corner, but it's going to be like the interesting fact corner, and it could just be anything random, just something quick. Mine tonight is my youngest daughter, Rachel, who's in 6th grade, had never played hacky sack before. And so we were up at church and had the hacky sack out, and it took me back to the old days. I used to be a little bit more flexible, but hey, I have to say, I still, I could still hack a little bit. It inspired me to maybe break that out. That was something we used to do, in high school and college, and even in scouts. We were doing that, and I was thinking, man, think about just sitting around and kicking this little sack of of beans around. Anyway, my life is quite busy, and I'm not doing that very often. But yes, there a little tidbit about me. Jason, you have to share one obscure fact connected in no way to educational technology news.
I can share one of those. I was a big music kid in high school, and debate was my broad passion, but I was close enough to studying music in college that I had actually committed to a college to study music and get placed in bands and stuff. And I play, although not as frequently in the last 15 years or so, trumpet, trombone, tuba, percussion, a little bit of French horn, a touch of baritone, and a little bit of saxophone. So my wife will occasionally, I apparently have like freakish memory for lyrics. So I'll just, especially there's certain Sirius XM channels that are in my wheelhouse, but I apparently know the lyrics of the most obscure songs ever. So I apparently, despite not practicing, am somewhat of a lyric virtuoso. So that's my obscure fact of the day.
There you go. And we'll just have to think about whatever that corner is. Well, Jason, why don't you kick us off? We've got a bunch of articles tonight, and as usual, there's no way we're going to get through them all. So what would you like to start out with?
Sure. So it looks like we're starting to break things down into themes. And so I do want to talk about a little bit, because I think there's interesting points here about the various things we found about artificial intelligence. And it's starting to become something that I'm extremely interested, partially because there is some plug-in to my research for my doctorate, but I think that there is a growing body of interest in this because of how quickly it's evolving inside of our world. And we have a couple articles this week that are all extremely interesting pieces of the kind of AI question. The one that I was most interested in was the fact that there's starting to become a lot of services available that through artificial intelligence are able to replace human services. And I think obviously that's a very important topic in 2016 because of the fear and sometimes irrational and sometimes not, a fear of technology taking over what previously were human jobs. And of course, we focus a lot of that attention on hands-on jobs, physical jobs, factory jobs. Whereas this particular case, I was struck by the article from CIO that said that there is a tool available that allows you to use artificial intelligence to view legal documents and see if there are concerns or problems with that legal document. And it's interesting to me that that would be something that's not just a basic proofreading job. That's a skilled proofreading job where you need to have some knowledge and some expertise in that to be able to provide that service. But there is increasing amounts of technology and this artificial intelligence that helps make judgments related to these particular pieces. But the broader question that I've stumbled into another article the other day related to this is Bill Gates is starting to talk about, and of course, there's a lot of hand-wringing about Gates Foundation funding because they have funded some initiatives that are, or didn't work out or, received some criticism for folks. The small schools initiatives was an example of one that I was involved with as a teacher that was kind of ho-hum based on faculty response and then also the research response to it. But the interesting piece about that is that Bill Gates is talking about personalized learning as it relates to artificial intelligence and how really the technology of the future that will plug into our classrooms will be less device-based, maybe even less about creativity and empowering students, but rather, plugging into large cloud-based databases that provide interesting data analytics to help figure out the best way students can learn content or progress content. So I guess maybe I'd ask this question, Wes, how is AI impacting you now?
Well, this will be connected to my Geek of the Week because algorithms that are smart and that are agents and that are able to do things for us are part of the AI revolution that is underway. It's happening now. So I won't go into the whole thing, but Nuzzle and Flipboard and some of these other things that use the network and that also are to some degree learning what you like to be able to show you more things similar to your interests. That's one way it's impacting me. It's definitely impacting me in thinking about STEM and just becoming more and more passionate about how we have to be talking about coding and promoting coding and helping more students make the shift from consumer to media creator and producer, but also algorithm writer. And I'm like less than an hour to go in the book that I think I shared last time, the Industries of the Future by Alec J. Ross. And he's talking about three primary things: robotics, artificial intelligence, and genomics. Those three things. So like my son's a senior, he's going into college. Like if he goes into one of those things, it's probably going to be a really good career path because, AI is going to and is opening the door for not just repetitive tasks that are routine, but it's going to open the door for more cognitive kinds of tasks being done. One of the things they talk about, and we don't have an article about it, is in Japan, the whole basically nursing care and elder care, and how there are not enough people in Japan. And this also has to do with their immigration policy, et cetera. They are investing billions of dollars in AI. So it's impacting my thinking in that way. It's impacting my wife in the way that she's using math instruction and using Dreambox. Dreambox is an adaptive math technology, and she is amazed at how her students are able to learn different ways. And it is so beyond something that she's a very, very talented elementary teacher and a math specialist, but the instructional learning that those kids are having using their iPad and using Dreambox has exceeded her own capacity to be able to customize and differentiate math instruction specifically for them. And she teaches 3rd and 4th graders who, have a reading level that can vary from kindergarten maybe up to 5th grade, and math levels all over the place as well. So I think we're getting glimpses of it. And it is part of the learning revolution. Every student deserves, whether they have an IEP or not, a differentiated learning path. And I know you're passionate about this with distance education, Jason, in terms of, how students sometimes will go for remediation, or when things don't work out with the traditional school, you try something else. We have been in the business, I guess, in education, really, of thinking about standardization and thinking about, here's sort of the sandwich that everyone is going to get served. And so I think what AI, and this is, I actually didn't get to read this article as far as Gates, but the whole promise of differentiation, customization, adaptive learning, there are tools that can use it now. And it makes me think of Into Darkness with Star Trek, right? Remember that opening scene where the young Spock is in this, surrounded by screens, and he's, I don't know if he's doing a test or he's learning, but that idea of the holodeck and virtual reality and being able to have a customized learning pathway, it doesn't mean that the teacher goes away, but it does mean there's incredible tools in our hands and that our roles can change and shift. Do you guys have AI impacting you at all as far as what you're doing with distance learning, or is that a pathway you see for students in Montana in terms of coding, or what's the impact you see?
Well, the biggest impact in my day-to-day job is that one of the programs that my organization administers is something called EdReady, and EdReady is a tool of it used to be called the National Repository of Online Courses. Now they're just known as the NROC project, but it's a open source, open resource development organization out of Monterey, California, and a couple of years ago, they developed a really amazing developmental mathematics series. It's available openly. You can go to nrocmath.org and get access to all the assets. The assets are available online. You can point to them and utilize them. It's really great stuff. But the members of the NROC project, and Montana Education Academy is a member, and then Bob Curry, our executive director, is a founding a member of that organization. They developed something called EdReady, and EdReady is a personalized, customized math readiness tool. And the best way to describe it is that, and this has been a marketing challenge for us initially, although it's taken off I was trying to think of a metaphor there that I apparently cannot reach, but it's been flying off the free shelf like hotcakes here in Montana, and there's a cattail for the evening. But we've been delivering, and we've been very gracious to receive generous funding from the Phyllis J. and Dennis Washington Foundation to fund it for 3 years in Montana. But it's essentially a tool that allows you to set a goal. So the goal that was originally developed for was, I want to be ready for college math, right? And that question of students that show up to colleges needing remediation mathematics is a significant challenge in K-12 and higher ed. And a lot of times it's not that the student hasn't had the mathematics or hasn't mastered it in the past. It's they take that placement test 2 years after they last took a mathematics course. And there's a variety of reasons why students don't do well in that. But what EdReady does is it gives you a an assessment, and based on that assessment gives you customized mathematics resources that target exactly what you're weak in, and then allows you to reassess based on that to eventually get a level of mastery. And it seems very simple on its face, but we've seen it take off like fire in Montana because like that's a very powerful tool to put in a teacher's hands. In fact, we term it as that. You have to see this tool as a tool, right? There's no way to to see it as an independent way to ignore a mathematics class. Like, you really need it to help deliver in context of a mathematics program. But the early research on it's been very promising, and we like to think that it's amongst the greatest things we can start using technology for, is to provide a way to customize a curriculum, customize delivery of instruction that best meets students' needs, especially in something linear like mathematics, where if a student does get a unit or two or a year or two behind, progressing them forward or not stopping or not providing a customized way for that student to get more direct instruction, you may be dooming that student to permanently be off their mark in regards to that process. The thing that always very much interests me in this question is, are we doing enough to kind of grab students right when they kind of deviate from the pathway? And there's a lot of research that says that once you get far enough away from the regular progression, it's really hard to catch back up again. And tools like EdReady really provide, I think, an opportunity to do that. But you mentioned Dreambox. I've seen demos of other tools that are like Dreambox over the last 2 or 3 years. I think it's really a great tool set to give to teachers, that acknowledging that there's a lot of content areas where you may have students in very different locations in the continuum, and you might need to utilize an extra set of digital hands in order to really deliver to that student. And I've always believed that one of the biggest weaknesses of differentiating instruction is that it's incredibly labor intensive, right? Like, if you're not able to deliver because you have small classes and a relatively small class size compared to the teacher force, then you're going to end up not doing a great job with some end or the other. Either the smart kids are going to throw an extra book, which doesn't help them, or the kids on the other end of the spectrum aren't going to get individualized attention to really make a difference in their continuing education. I think technology can really help, build some capacity in classrooms to make that happen.
Absolutely. Well, there were a couple links that I just had to talk about tonight, and I had actually moved them to the top. And the first one that's in the AI category, which, by the way, welcome to Jose and others that are joining us. If you want to get these links, you can go to edtechsr.com/links. Is an article series that has 2 parts right now. It's by a guy named John Smart. He's John M. Smart. Sounds like a good name. On Twitter. This is an example of setting yourself up for intentional serendipity, because I have a Twitter list of Yodas, of which, of course, Jason is on that list, and so is John Seeley Brown, who's an amazing thinker and an educator. So John Seeley Brown shared it this week, and I found it. It's a post on Medium. And John Smart is writing a book that he's openly publishing in 15 chapters, and he's basically releasing a chapter every 2 weeks on Wednesday. And this is the first one. I've only read the first one. It's called Your Personal Sim, Your Attention Please, The Brave New World of Smart Agents and Their Data. And so part of this world that we're in now and we're moving into is this world where we're going to have agents that algorithms that are going to be able to scour the web and find things that we want, and we're going to be able to, if not directly code, we're going to be able to tweak so that they basically do our bidding and do our will. We are becoming superhumans. I mean, already with the phones that we have, that's why I think we feel naked and incomplete when we walk out of the house and, oh my gosh, I forgot my phone, or I don't know where that went. It's because it's becoming an essential part of how our brains extend and the idea landscape and horizon that we operate in. It's no longer just face-to-face. There's a lot of virtual connections. And so I loved the first segment of this. I'm going to go ahead and read the second part. And I just think I loved hearing Ian Jukes back in the day at conferences, right? I mean, Ian Jukes would blow your mind, showing you all this, implantable tech and stuff that's going to be coming down the pike. And sometimes it would freak you out and get you scared. And maybe it was to rattle your cage and get people to think about, doing some things differently. I don't think AI fits completely in that arena where it's just like, wow, this is cool. I think that there are ways that it should be impacting our learning right now today, that there are agents and apps and things that we can be using. Dreambox is an example. I dropped the link for, I put it under OER, but I dropped the link to the NROC project. I mean, we're talking about incredibly powerful things, and they are extending the computational, the cognitive abilities of our minds. They're going to allow us to do things that we could not do on our own. And it's eventually, and even though I don't have a chip in my brain and I don't have this, physical silicone technology plugged into me, we are becoming transhuman, and it's pretty wild because the capacities. I mean, some of the stuff in that other book that I talked about that I've finished reading, that's the Pentagon's Brain: The Uncensored History of DARPA. I mean, we're talking about eye transplants that people maybe they can already do now because there's a lot of classified stuff, that'll allow people to, for instance, see in the infrared, to have night vision just, with your eyes, to be able to actually extend your sensory perception beyond what you can do. It's crazy, but I don't think it's just in the realm of, wow, isn't that wild? Isn't the future just, shocking? I think it definitely has implications for how we learn today, the tools that we're accessing, and the ones that we're trying to put, we're trying to connect to students. Because just like you talked about, students who get so far behind that if they don't have those kinds of adaptive tools and those alternate pathways, they don't have time to have seat time, to catch up. They have got to find other pathways to be able to catch up. So it's important for us to be able to put those tools in the hands of kids, and then also to make the case that, look, this isn't something that only, the kids that the regular school hasn't worked for deserve. Why don't we put these powerful tools in the hands of all learners potentially, so that they can, possibly not take, X number of years or X number of months to, complete the canon of skills and things like that you're saying you need.
Well, and I would say that the notion of the kind of personalized learning paths and that sort of thing is going to cause us to start to question some of those core institutions that we've really built schools around, whether it's the Carnegie unit, or the notion of credit, or the notion of mastery, or the notion of continuums. Like, to be clear, I'm not a necessarily an advocate for completely chucking everything, because I think there's lots of great parts of our institutions that we have, but we do need to start considering where things don't fit. And the classic example of this is that the fact that we've created a credit unit where pre-algebra and AP physics are considered to be the same unit of something, when the content doesn't even really fit in the same time period, right? And time is a fleeting thing with some of these personalized tools, but it's a different concept, it's a different a depth, it's a different a way of approaching a topic, and that needs to change, and that's something we very much need to question from its foundation. I think the notion of now I have a cat licking my face. Hi, Lily, how you doing? Good to see you. That is that you're challenging these pieces. I think it's all a good part of the process, but I think technology is really where it's going to allow us to maybe make some of those changes. Whereas the personalized app can become a great equalizer in allowing students in a lot of different scenarios to all learn at a forward continuum. And yeah, I think it's exciting stuff. And that I would recommend folks to take a look at that article from The Verge that interviewed Bill Gates and talked to him a little bit about the notion of personalization. And in fact, I will tout to say that Mr. Gates did mention the EdReady project a couple of weeks ago, and we're that there are emerging tools available, both commercial and free, that can start to shake up some of those barriers of the continuum of curriculum and pacing and the things that we do need to maybe question this foundation.
So I'm going to drop a link in, then we'll shift to another topic. But on the subject of questioning things and looking at changing schools, Will Richardson on April 9th had a really good post called 9 Elephants in the Classroom That Should Unsettle Us, that focused on things among others, boredom, and how we know that the traditional high school plan is just not meeting needs in a lot of cases. And so anyway, I would just commend that. That's really not news. It's a it's a post, but it was really a thought-provoking one. So I want to shift us to another topic of social media moderation, and this is truly an article that blew my mind as well this last week. I'm enjoying having the EdTech Situation Room because it sets me up to know I need to be finding these articles to share. But it's called Social Media Moderating Facebook, the dark side of social media, and it tells several stories, among others, how when Facebook was first invented or whatever. No, I guess maybe it's talking about it's YouTube. A small number of folks that were working for the organization, and they had to figure out how to keep YouTube from becoming a garbage heap. How to keep porn off, how to keep violence, just terrible things. And one of the stories that they tell is basically a story of virtual scarring. One of the implications of this is we need to understand as parents and teachers that virtual is real, not in the same way of face-to-face, but when I experience something that I see virtually, I can have cognitively the same physiological, chemical, emotional, responses as if I had actually seen that happen in person. Case in point, a friend of mine who graduated a couple of years ahead of me at the Air Force Academy was in Iraq for years in intelligence, and he wasn't kicking down doors and having to shoot people, but he was an intelligence officer, and he was having to look at many images and possibly videos too of the aftermath of these things, and he was medically retired with PTSD, affected in very real ways, just like the teams that were actually going into these places. Okay, so the story here was a terrible video that this young, I think older, probably early 20s, person who was starting out with YouTube had to see, and it just scarred her forever. Moderation is really an important thing. The point they make in this article is there are unwritten rules for this, and even YouTube and Google and Facebook don't necessarily reveal what their exact criteria are. It has huge implications for global current events. In the case of Iran and the Green Revolution that happened a few years ago, they allowed this video of a girl who had been shot, to stay on YouTube, and that was a huge catalyst for all kinds of political. People just being galvanized towards that whole revolution, because it was visible there. So, moderation remains very important for us in our classrooms. We don't want things to blow up, and we have students share work, or we share work, and somebody bullies or puts profanity or something inappropriate. But there's another side of this, I think, that is reminding ourselves about the reality of the virtual. My wife's kids sometimes have really stark, movie experiences, like really young and seeing the Chucky movies and seeing, these really, really, horror movies. I don't know if there's a theory about this, but I think when there's a wide enough gap between what's normal for you and then what this experience is, that can really be jarring. And so in some cases, her kids have a lot of experience seeing a lot of mature and I don't know what all the words for those things are, but probably things that we're not going to be allowed to be seen in school. Anyway, this is a very thought-provoking article and really got me thinking about moderation, and it got me thinking about the ways in which values are projected through moderation, and also just differences in the world in terms of what the norms are, and how our technology companies that are big and are probably just going to keep getting bigger, that whole dynamic, there's an important normative side to the moderation that YouTube does, that Facebook does. I think you had an article maybe last time or one of our just recent sessions talking about, video and Facebook and how much they're wanting to take that over. So any thoughts about moderation and, the whole sphere of social media and social networking and how that interfaces with education in schools?
Well, I think that when I first heard the article, the thing that I was most struck by is the fact that I read a similar article 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, that someone at Flickr or Yahoo Photos or something had a similar job, and it talked about exactly what this article talked about, that there's high burnout rate. It was an easy job for the money. You really just sat all day clicking through, large numbers of photographs / videos / whatever. And it was when you found something, and you see what kind of stuff ends up on Flickr and YouTube and Facebook. If that's the stuff that's not getting moderated, that definitely tells you that there's a lot of stuff that must be getting pushed out by the moderators that is pretty stark. And that's would definitely suggest to me that that it must be just a horrifying job. And, part of what, and I would be willing to bet that there's not a single large social network that doesn't treat this logarithmically somewhat, that there are certain things that it can look for that's probably going to, catch pieces. That's Facebook has been in trouble a lot because of breastfeeding mothers being pulled off of Facebook. And I haven't read if there's been a resolution to that particular issue or not, but they were being categorized as nudity and pulled off some cases before they were ever allowed to publish. And then some of those accounts were then getting blocked when they post multiple photos because they seem to be a serial abuser of this or that policy. And it's an important thing that people need to come to terms with, that in a world where everyone can publish, it is YouTube, right? That there's going to be stuff that is going to violate community norms related to that. That said, I think democratization of content, which Facebook and YouTube and the web in general does, also does evolve community norms a bit. And my guess is that over time, there's what is considered acceptable is probably going to change and be pushed by the boundaries of having universal access to content. In a lot of ways, kids are kind of leading the way here in the fact that they've, in a lot of cases, migrated to Snapchat for their daily evolution of communicating with one another. They know that the Facebook is written in ink. And that the web is written in ink. And although obviously you can snap a Snapchat photo and yada, 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 that there's a kind of an unwritten social rule that generally you don't on that platform, and that you need to be able to publish and do stupid things and occasionally screw up and not have it, on there, which is very related to the question of the truly inappropriate content that ends up on these platforms.
And really, that's kind of good in a way. I mean, because I've said, and I've heard many people say, "Oh, I'm so glad we didn't have Facebook when I was a teenager. I'm so glad, we didn't have YouTube." So it's, and my son actually gave me a really good lesson here a couple of weeks ago on Snapchat, and I've, been using it with our family some, and it's interesting because I think some adults see that and they just think, oh my gosh, that's terrible. There's permission for sexting. And while that certainly can happen on the platform, and it can happen with all other kinds of apps, it also just gives you an opportunity to not be on the ink record, to write with a pencil, so to speak. And I guess I see the benefit of that. But I know that, adults and the aging population always fears for the youth and what the youth are doing and, how things are going downhill. And there's always some credence to that. But I think that, conversations are essential. This stuff is changing so fast. I mean, our kids are, high school senior, high school sophomore, sixth grader. We've been doing digital citizenship at school with Carl Hooker, who came and I just wrote up 5 different little digital citizenship tips that are going to be emailed out hopefully to parents in the last 5 weeks of school. And some of these have to do with monitoring software, et cetera. But conversations are essential. There's no one who has the answer on all this stuff. And because the traditional gatekeepers are gone, it's up to individuals to be making a lot more choices. Yes, Netflix doesn't allow pornography, and the iTunes store doesn't either. But, there's all kinds of decisions to make in terms of games to play, apps to have, shows to watch, and what we're programming our mind. And so I think that it's an exciting world, but it appears to be a more chaotic world outside the bounds of adult control, to a far greater extent than before. In fact, that's one of the quotations from the Industries of the Future by Alec J. Ross. He says, it's a terrible age to be a control freak in. And he's talking about government. But, it kind of plays out with technology as we think about classrooms and schools too, that our role really isn't just the controller and the funnel. It's a lot more the facilitator and the coach and the counselor. Maybe at times, it's the disciplinarian. But anyway, I don't know. Lots of really good thinking, and also just, I don't know. There's probably always going to be more darkness in the world than we want to see and we want to acknowledge. But there's some level of that we need to be aware of when we're parents and when we're teachers, in order to try and help kids get steered in the right direction. So, all right, Jason, we're a little more than halfway through. So, where would you like to take us next?
Well, maybe a more big picture practical one, but this is probably a quick topic. But Intel announces it's cutting 11% of its workforce due largely to the continuing softening market of desktop and laptop computers. This particular topic has been an extraordinary amount of interest to me personally lately, because I've learned a lot more about things like hardware benchmarking and the speed of computers. And I've been shocked to find out in the last 2 years that the lower end consumer level computers are slower than mid-range and high-end professional machines from 7 years ago. And I have a lot of ways I know this. As you know, I've turned into this cloud-ready Chromebook creator guy. I run around with my little USB drive with cloud-ready on it. It's like a little magic wand that I walk up to things, and now you're a Chromebook, and now you're a Chromebook, and now you're a Chromebook.
That's awesome.
But the reason why that's been so interesting to me is because those computers were considered trash and dogs in a lot of ways. But when you start to benchmark the CPUs sitting in those machines, they are faster than the low-end Lenovo, Dell, HP. It doesn't really matter who the manufacturer is that's being sold as new consumer product in 2016. Yeah, the new ones are a little thinner and they're a little lighter, and sometimes they have better battery life. But I think that what's happening right now is that unless you're buying super high-end hardware, there's just not a lot left to do to provide someone a laptop that's functional with a modern-day operating system. And the fact that my primary computer now is a 5-year-old HP laptop with Windows 10 and cloud ready, and then Ubuntu because I'm a huge nerd on it, like that, and it's like, and I have other access to other platforms that I can utilize, but it's just shocking me that this $200 machine that was a lot more 5 or 6 years ago is perfectly advanced to provide me, a power user, a good experience. And I think that the two parts of the story here is that obviously mobile's taking over. People don't buy their kids, a laptop anymore. They buy a cell phone and maybe a shared laptop. The cell phone has really replaced the laptop as the go-to device for pieces. But the reality is that it's also because you can buy, especially if you invest in a decent piece of hardware. And I would point out Macs here. Macs are always beautifully built, high-end hardware. They're going to have a lot longer of a lifespan than PCs, 10 years ago, which, quickly were outdated by modern pieces. And so you just need to watch, manufacturers respond in the process. Obviously, I wouldn't want to be in the desktop PC chip business today, but they're just not creating that exciting of stuff. I mean, it's just not, there's nothing that great about the laptop sitting in consumer level places that are not or that are available. So I know that you are obviously involved in some purchasing. You're involved in purchasing as your daily job, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thinking about this as far as refresh, my dogs are barking and they're going to have a fight right here. So,
this week in pets.
Here, would you like? Well, yeah. Here's the golden retriever fight for the night. So yeah, that's Scarlet and Willow. Yeah, and Willow just lays down to get in her fighting position. All right, enough digression. Yes, I am involved in purchasing for our tech department, and in fact, we're looking at right now what we're going to be refreshing at the end of this year, and we've kind of had a 5-year refresh recycle for desktops and laptops as well. Some of the implications of this is, it's amazing just when you throw an SSD drive into a 2012 MacBook, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like an Air. It makes such a difference as far as performance and how fast it is. And I think part of what this challenges us to think about in EdTech is, our refreshes and when do we need to get new machines and how fast is fast enough. We've purchased 2 Surface Pros, one for our headmaster and then one for another one of our directors. And, with 8 gigs of RAM, do you remember when that was just so crazy? You didn't even have a server that had 8 gigs of RAM. So, lots of horses that these devices have. And, and in some cases, they're driving multiple, external HDMI monitors and, maybe doing video editing and things like that. But I am certainly looking at our older platforms and what you've talked about with the Neverware, right? Cloud Ready. We've dabbled with that a little bit. We still have the holdouts. I've got a situation with some of our maintenance guys where really they just need the web, and I think that it would meet their needs, but the mindset is, I got to have Windows. I got to have a full blown new system, and oh my gosh, maybe you do, but we talked last week about ransomware and about malware and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And from an IT standpoint, being able to almost have a thin client environment where you have a very light, like Chrome, you're running Chrome, the intelligence is in the cloud. I think this is a big part of the present and the future. And it also segues back to what we were talking about with AI, because that's the vision of AI. The vision of AI is not that you're going to have all the, knowledge and wisdom of the world in your device. It's going to be a high-speed connection to the internet where you're going to have supercomputers that have this AI capability, and then you're going to be tapping into it, with your device. So we're not one-to-one. We're not, I would say, on the edge of that. But as I think about that, and I think about advice that I would provide, in our situation, I tend to lean towards Chromebooks and thinking about thin client and easy to manage and lower malware. And also, frankly, $250, because if you're going to do that, let's say when you're starting middle school in 5th grade, maybe you could buy a new MacBook today and get through to 12th grade, but probably not. But if you, drop $250 on a Chromebook now, and then, 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years from now, need to do something else, I think it should challenge us to think about refresh, and also just thinking about what people need, because we've assumed in our case, everybody needs a smartboard. Everybody needs a full-blown MacBook Pro. And while I'm not saying, and if anybody at our school is listening, I'm not saying we're changing any of that, but I am saying that I think it begs the question of what do we need and what do we use, and also what's fiscally, what are the responsible ways to use our dollars, and to think about kind of the promise that we make as far as the refresh and all that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting. We're not refreshing laptops this year. We're just really refreshing desktops. But next year, there's like, which laptop do we refresh? And then also, do you look at a mobile device? Do you look at an iPad Pro instead of a laptop?
Yep. Well, and I got to tell you, I'm working on an epic blog post right now that I know I will promote once it's done. Because it's an important topic to me, and it's also been a lot of research, but it's called the $75 Chromebook is the working title of the article. And I picked up a 7-year-old laptop on eBay for $75 that it has an HD screen on it and the highest end dual core processor and 8 gigabytes of RAM. And all I did was slap another, it was a $15 32 gigabyte SSD drive that was on super mega clearance on Newegg. So I guess it's now the $90 Chromebook. But the point is that it benchmarks faster than every Chromebook I've used, including the $400 i3 model that we purchased in the office to first test out Chromebooks, right? And it's got a beautiful screen. It has a great professional keyboard on it, and it's a beast from a weight and a like lugging around standpoint. But kids don't carry laptops with them, right? You could easily put that on someone's desk or have it for checkout, or use the ridiculous Dell bag that came with it that you could use to punch someone in the face with. And it's the fastest Chromebook I've used. And I'm different than a lot of folks, like in that I could live probably pretty entirely in Chrome world without much to do with it. But it's perfectly good enough. I've spent the work day, with my cell phone with earphones plugged into it to listen to my productive music, and just worked on there all day. And I was able to screencast from there. I was able to take screenshots from there. I was able to work the help desk all day long and answer all the email and deal with my calendar and write and work on a presentation. And I think that's just an underappreciated fact, that I can buy that used equipment with the software that's available with something like Cloud Ready. It's just a pretty impressive stuff. And so it's funny because, again, I've turned into this like weird benchmarking dude. So I go around benchmarking everything now. But that's 5-year-old HP mini 12.5-inch EliteBook that I'm carrying around has a faster processor in it than a lot of the nice Ultrabooks that you can buy for $1,000, without thinking much about it. So it's a very interesting topic to me. It makes me sound like one of the Linux nerds from the mid 2000s that were running around saying that you should install Red Hat on everything. It's so much faster than Windows. And I fear I sound like that guy, but it's true. Like you can do, especially since the web now, you can productively do almost everything you need to do unless you're doing something at a high-end professional level. It just is a no-brainer to me. Get devices in kids' hands, and that's a strategy for doing so.
Awesome. All right, well, I think we may have time for one more article, and then we'll do some Geeks of the Week. I definitely have to mention this incredible 60 Minutes show called Hacking Your Phone. Have you seen this yet?
I've not seen it. I've read about it, though.
Blows my mind. And unfortunately, it blows my mind in a way that when I want to tell people about it, the message is kind of like, be scared, be very scared. There's not another lesson, because what they're able to do with these hacker guys in Berlin is give a phone to a U.S. senator, and it's not his regular phone, but with these Berlin hackers only knowing his number, they are able to listen to his calls and intercept all of his text messages, because there's something called SR7 or something that has to do with how global roaming works and the way that they have access to it. It's crazy. There are military installations in the United States and possibly elsewhere that when you simply drive through them, they penetrate your phone and gain access to your phone without you doing anything. And they show how they've got sensors that are detecting these things. This is why they tell you, if you would actually go to Las Vegas to the Black Hat conference, you don't even turn your phone on.
Yeah.
They show the thing where people bump into somebody and then they have a Bluetooth connection, and then they can suck off everything off their device. We're talking not only contacts, we're talking credit cards, everything.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. And so when you think of the Internet of Things and how our houses are going to have digital thermostat and digital, locking door and digital refrigerator, it's like your house is going to be completely hackable, because people are not thinking about security, or they're not designing with security in mind. And so cybersecurity is right now, and is going to continue to be a huge field that we need to tell the children, we need to tell the parents. Like, seriously, if you have an aptitude and an interest in this area, you are not going to run out of work. And I'd love to know your thoughts about that kind of hacking phone thing, because there are some ways to securely send messages, but it just, one thing it shows me is that you do not want to be a target, right? Because if you or I would write something that would tick somebody off, and somebody would say, "Oh, let's go get that guy," and not even like turning anonymous on us or some big group, but just like hiring a hacker for hire without much effort and with information that's probably publicly accessible, people could really do damaging things to us. So, 60 Minutes is always known as being sensationalist, or I don't know, that a lot of their shows, they want to really, oh my gosh, can you believe this? It was one of the most amazing. I haven't shown it to my family, but I think I'm gonna subject my whole family to it. But I haven't still figured out the big takeaway. Okay, now that I know to be really scared, I'm not gonna stop using my smartphone. But I don't know. There is an app that I have installed on my phone that they mentioned in there. And I got to figure out what it is. It's something lock. I'll get the name of it. But it actually scans your iPhone for malware, which we don't really think about. Oh yeah, my phone is gonna have some bad stuff on it. Lookout is the name of the app, and it's free, and then you can pay for it. I don't know. Your thoughts on phone hacking and being scared about all this?
Well, I mean, it's the hard part for me is how little I'm sure people really fear, because they perceive that being inside your home or something physical is going to save you from that. And I knock on wood, I've never been hacked. The worst I've had is the typical credit cards and Target sort of thing. I mean, I've turned on all sorts of security layers, and at home and work, two-factor authentication, and all the things that are I think good security protocol. But at some point something really bad is going to have to happen before we start taking these things seriously. And I'm annoyed because I get a new credit card every 2 to 3 months now for my provider, because Home Depot was hacked, or Target was hacked, or my favorite one, a vendor, we won't tell you who, was hacked, and so I can't no longer give patronage to that vendor because I don't know who they are. So, those are all concerns to me, but that I'm protected in all those pieces. Like, those are annoyances, but they're not a bad thing, because federal law and credit card contracts protect me from that. There's something that's pretty awful that's going to occur at some point. It's going to impact a lot of people really negatively. It's going to turn power off, or it's going to turn off everyone's thermostats in the wintertime, or it's going to do something shenaniganly. Shenaniganly is a word I just made up, but that's really going to create some doom. And you've probably seen all that research about how one of the most open devices are all those Wi-Fi connected printers out there. That a ton of them have old firmware on them. They never get updated. It's very concerning. And the printer is the least interesting thing to hack in someone's house when the oven is connected to the network. The refrigerator is connected to the network. And I don't have any particular worries about health data, but man, I wouldn't put an insulin pump in that was Wi-Fi connected. That's literally life and death, right? Extra insulin, it's game over. So those things, and I always feel like that folks kind of in the know sound like they're overly panicky about this, but with billions of IP connected devices around the earth, you have to be cautious and start building cognizance in people that I get all this stuff is cool, and you're not going to find two bigger nerds folks than me and Wes, right? Like, we think this stuff is awesome, but it comes at a risk that we have to be aware of. So proceed with caution. Yep.
And I did put a link in here to an article that I had heard about on the industries of the future, because here we are named the EdTech Situation Room. Thankfully, you and I are not sitting in the White House Situation Room, because if we were, I think we would have an even more paranoid view on cyber terrorism and the potential for these kinds of things to really be disruptive. I had heard about, we've mentioned the Stuxnet virus, which was by most accounts that I've read, a CIA and Israeli engineered malware virus that basically took out the nuclear capability of Iran a few years ago. Well, that was evidently a response to something that had happened with Iran, and maybe I'm getting the order mixed up. Maybe that happened first, and then but Saudi Aramco, the oil company for Saudi Arabia, we're talking 30,000 computers hacked and disabled, and almost oil production for Saudi Arabia ended by a cyber attack from Iran. And like, I never heard of that before. And so I'm a big fan of Edie Hirsch and the book Cultural Literacy. And that book says that, in order to have conversations in the culture, we need to have shared knowledge about things, to talk about Bosnia-Herzegovina or to talk about genocide, happening in Syria today. We need to know about the Holocaust, et cetera, know about past things. It's interesting how a lot of this has been hidden and classified and is not well known. And I totally agree with you that unfortunately it's probably going to take something that's bigger scale. So anyway, I'm kind of thinking like my grandmother years ago with Y2K and how she was very, very paranoid about what might happen. But if you think about all the dependencies that we have on technology, on the ATM, I mean, I just don't carry much cash. There probably is a level of practical, just like we had tornado warnings last night in Oklahoma, and it's smart to have water, to have some food, to have flashlights. I mean, hey, we live in Tornado Alley. Hello. That's not being crazy paranoid. That's just being practical. There is a practical level of emergency preparedness that probably is part of this that we should think about. And I'm not saying to everybody, go buy your camo and get lots of ammunition and, plan to hole up. I don't know. At some level, though, I think there probably are some practical things that we need to think about because, the potential for these kinds of things to be highly disruptive to our society is only increasing. So with that foreboding word, I think we probably better go to our geeks of the week. And for those of you that may be joining us, our closing segment is basically sharing some kind of an app or website or something cool and geeky that we would recommend to others. So, Jason, what do you have for us this week?
I like to recommend. I'm a politics guy. My undergraduate work was in political science. It's been. I will admit that in the last couple of years that I've stopped using politics as like some folks watch sports. But I've been re-engaged in this election because it's so fascinating. And of course, we won't ever talk politics on this podcast, but I'm sure that wherever your political views are, you're finding this election quite fascinating. So my best place to go for that is the 538 blog, 538.com spelled out, or just type 538 in Google, but the number, you're good to go. Nate Silver, he was the proprietor of that organization. He was the one that called the 2008 election state by state, based on a polling logarithm that he had created. And then he was for a while sucked into the New York Times behemoth, and his blog was there. And I want to say he also did great stuff in 2012 related to that, although my memory is a little sticky there. But he's back in a more independent site. He's now owned by ESPN. His kind of daytime passion is to do statistics related to sports, but they're running fascinating articles on a daily basis at 538. And the best part about it is that they have a polling logarithm that allows you to see it, and right now it's primary polls. Like you can go to for example, the Indiana Democratic primary, and you could see both their an average of polls based on their historical records of what has been the most accurate of polls. They have an algorithm that picks out the most accurate of polls, but they have what they call a polls plus forecast, which is based on their algorithm and their factors that they've kind of internally calculated what the most likely scenario is. And they've been pretty close in a lot of elections. They didn't call Bernie Sanders win in and I forgot the state that he turned. Was it Michigan? I think it might have been. That was a big shock to everyone, but in a lot of other ways, they provide great analysis, and because it's numbers, it's not really politically bent in a partisan way. So they also have an amazing podcast. It's worth your listen once a week, the 538 Politics podcast. But I would recommend, if you're a political junkie at all, or if you want a little bit of analysis that goes with the polls that come with the election season, 538 is your place.
Awesome. And only 610,000 followers. So yeah, just a few people following there on Twitter.
Yep.
All right. Well, my geeks of the week, I'm going to do two. First off is, I mentioned it earlier, Nuzzle. I'm going to get to do, I'm so excited at ISTE this year. I have 3 presentations. I've never had that many accepted. getting to do a poster and a BYOD and a lecture. And my BYOD is really about using Flipboard and Nuzzle, discovering new ideas. It's going to be an enduring challenge, right? We've got all this information, we've got all this access. How do you find information, curate it? To quote my friend Jason, how do you trap it? Love that metaphor. How do you create virtual breadcrumbs in the virtual forest so you can return back to your ideas? Nuzzle, N-U-Z-Z-E-L, is an app, and it's also a website that leverages your community. So as you follow people on Twitter or on Facebook, it will show what most of your friends are reading and recommending. And it doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but hey, if more than 5 people are liking this article, and you follow people that are educators and interested in technology and learning and things like that, it is a really, really nice way to crowdsource learning. And instead of just going to a feed of all this stuff, it's an intelligent way to filter it and put some things at the top to say, hey, you really ought to look at this. So I end up looking at Nuzzle multiple times a week on my phone or on my iPad. And then, sharing those links. You can go to nuzzle.com/WFryer. And because I've opened that up, you can take a look at what the people that I follow, have liked in the last 24 hours or the last 4 hours or on Wednesday. And so, this isn't artificial intelligence, but it is an algorithm, and it's a powerful way to filter information and bring it to you in sort of a custom funnel that I think is pretty awesome. So the next thing is a little faster, and I was traveling the last 2 weeks, had a chance to go to San Antonio for a huge art festival that had 80 tour buses and 3,200 kids at. We're going to host it next year at our school. It's going to be crazy. And then last week I was at the ISAS Technology Director Conference, and that was in Dallas at an amazing school called Parish Episcopal School. I am sure they spent over $100,000, if not multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars on their robotics lab and their makerspace. I've never seen anything just as incredible. I don't know if they had three different welders and a plasma welder that could cut titanium, 4 or 5 drill presses, all this stuff. Here was my number one takeaway. People talk about 3D printers. They're so exciting. Everyone get one. Actually, their advice was get a laser cutter first, because laser cutters can produce things a lot faster. Kids can create a design, make something, and have it in their hands, and it won't take 3 hours or 5 hours per item to be able to print. So I put into the Geek of the Week the full spectrum entry-level laser cutter. The one they had there was actually $15,000, but you can get one of these for about $3,500. Where I have the link that says, see its big brother in action. That's a little Vine video that I took of, and I should have had the box. It's over here that I actually made, whatever. It's there. It seems silly because it's like, look, Mom, look what I made. I made this, I put a design, I put some designs on this box and somebody else did it. It's like, I didn't exactly make this. Somebody else really helped a lot, but it's very cool. It's in terms of makerspace and designing and creating laser cutters. In this case, we were cutting out wood. A lot of the stuff that you'll find when you go to Hobby Lobby and other kinds of stores, have been produced with different kinds of materials on, some kind of a laser cutter. And so anyway, it just makes me, thinking about the makerspace and things that we might have at our school. And for anybody who's on that kind of journey and wanting to have a makerspace and promote STEM, don't just think 3D printing, think laser cutter as well.
Awesome.
All right. Any closing thoughts for the good of the order?
Yeah. So it's getting to the time where we're getting folks downloading the podcast, and we would really appreciate it if you gave us a review on iTunes, help other people find the podcast. You can always find past episodes and show notes at edtechsr.com. And I'm also happy to announce that we now have a Facebook page. We don't have an official link yet because we need 25 likes first. So we'll be working on that over the coming weeks. But if you want to go search out EdTech Situation Room, you'll be able to find us on Facebook and give us a good old thumbs up. And by request on Twitter today, we will be appearing in the Stitcher app in coming days. There's an application process we need to go through to do that, but it looked pretty straightforward. We've completed that application, and soon we will join the other many excellent podcasting voices on the Stitcher app. So like us on Stitcher, like us on iTunes, like us wherever finer podcasts are aggregated in your life, and let us know if you have questions, comments, thoughts. EdTech SR at Twitter, and I'm Tech Savvy Teach on Twitter, and Wes, where they can find you on Twitter.
And I am W Fryer on Twitter, and we would love to, pick up and talk about any articles that you want to share or anything that you would like to toss our way. So we'll probably be working on maybe bringing in some guest voices. If you have an interest in being on the show or you have a recommendation for us, let us know. Our plan is to mostly be here every Wednesday night, and we will hopefully see you next week. It's severe weather time, so there's more exciting weather coming our way. So someday we may, I don't think I can actually take my wireless down into the tornado shelter, but who knows? We'll stay tuned, and the best way to find out what's happening is to follow us on Twitter. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.